Hey guys, and welcome back to another FastAPI video. In this session, I want to take a look at something that's particularly important, especially if you're building a RESTful API, and that is the ability to receive files and then do stuff with said files. So it's going to be fairly short because I think FastAPI makes this quite nice and simple. So I want to kind of cover three main points. We'll first look at how to accept files via a post endpoint. So we'll be setting up a new route and accepting a file and then printing it out. We'll look at then how to save the file contents. And one thing that's interesting here is I tend to use the async keyword here. I like to make it so that rather than doing def my endpoint, we do async def endpoint. So I'll explain a bit about why I think we should be using async when we have endpoints that accept files. I mean, the short story is that it's basically doing two things. We have an endpoint that's functioning and listening, but also trying to do an I/O operation of doing something with a file. That's the short answer, but yeah, I'll show you how to set this up and get it all up and running. Now, what we're going to be doing is similar to last video. So recall in the last session, we did a post request to some submit score endpoint, and we sent in some stuff via JSON. This time, however, it's going to be a bit different. We're going to be using the F flag in curl, and we're going to be saying file equals at myfile.txt. And this is somewhere, there it is. So I'm going to be sending off this bad boy to our API. Our API is going to be doing something with it, so we might have a go at saving it or just simply outputting its contents. So a fairly common thing to do with FastAPI, and hopefully by the end of this video you've got a really good idea as to how to do this using your own code. So let's start right from the very beginning. This is my main.py code, and this is basically the entry point to my application. So we define it here, and we've then done this, app.includeRouter. And this was because I said from the routes, go to submit scores and import the router there. So basically what I like to do is basically give each route its own file and then import them and then add them to the main app. So I'm going to do something similar here, but what I think I should do first is do scores router here, just to kind of keep them separate. Now, let's go into routes and let's define a really simple post endpoint, and we'll then add it into here, and then we'll kind of incrementally build it up, shall we? So from routes, let's do new file, and let's call this, not very imaginative, receive file.py, and let's make a docstring. So we'll say this is an endpoint to receive and process a file. We'll then do the imports the same as the other file, so we'll just say from FastAPI import API router. I then also want to bring in two new ones as well. We'll do file and upload file here, just like this. I'm then going to define a router inside this, so I will do router is equal to API router, like that. And then, tell you what, let's pause there for a second. Let's just import this back into the main app. So see like how I just did this one here. If I just go and do the same thing, but rather than doing .submit scores, we got to do receive file. Actually, I've just realized a small mistake. So I should have done import router as scores router. So I do apologize. But to be honest, whenever I make a mistake like that, I think it's quite real keeping it in. So we'll do the same thing as this here. So we'll say import router as, but we'll do this as file router here. So that would have made a mistake. If I had done this like that, this would have basically said like, I don't know what scores router is. So we import router as scores router, and I'll do the same thing, import router from receive file, but we're saying import it under the alias of file router. So we take this and we do this here, and then we say file router like that. Now what I want to do is just run the app and check it runs. And yep, okay, no problem, that's fine. Let's close it again and get this screen cleared. And then we'll start to build our endpoint inside of receive file. So I'll start with my decorator. So this is going to be at router.post. And let's call it post file for now. So if I go back to my video aims for a sec, this will be changed to just like post file like that. As long as this matches that, then we should be good to go. And then normally we'd do something like def, not like that, post file, and then some arguments here. But because this is going to be processing a file, I think it makes sense to make this an async def post file, because this function is going to be handling, the idea of being an endpoint and then handling a file. So doing an async def, as long as we have an await keyword in here somewhere, like this, then we should be okay. So I'll pause that for a second. Let's just comment out this line, if Python lets me. There we go. And we now want to fill in what this new endpoint is taking. So I'm going to say file, and this is of the type of upload file here. So that's why I imported this first. And then the way to do this is to then do file ... and some colon at the end here like that. And we'll say a simple endpoint. This is a simple endpoint to receive a file. There we go. Now, this is what we need to reference inside. So envision what happens when you normally look at a file. You can do things like file.read. Now we need to go ahead and use this await somewhere. So what I'll do for this is I'll do contents is equal to await file.read here. So this bit and this bit are really important here. I'd recommend having a look at what async and await do together. This isn't really the full video on it, but the basic premise of why I'm doing this is because this is a function that is sort of doing two things. One of them is IO bound, meaning that it's dealing with reading something, and then later on we'll be writing to file as well. That's why I've done async and await here like this. And we'll just do return 200. 200 just being like the HTTP for all is well. Right, shall I be brave and run the app? Okay, doesn't seem to be too miserable. Let's go ahead and take this. I'm going to copy this here, head back to this guy, and just to show you where I am, if I ls, I do have the myfile.txt here. So why don't we take this and try and call the endpoint? There we go, look at that. Gave us a 200, and we should see if we go back to the app, post file, okay. Let's do it a few more times. Dun, dun. Yeah, looks good. And there we go. Right, let's go back to receive file, and why don't we do the following here? Let's do contents like this. Actually, let's do an f string. I'm just printing this inside, so I'm not actually returning this. This is just going to be inside, like the function itself. So we should see this in this terminal. So I think we have to rerun, so I'm going to reload. Actually, tell you what, if you did want to make it reload, if you do -- reload like this, so say I like change this to 201, see how it reloads? So a little tip there for you on that one. Do the reload flag at the end and it will reload every time you save a file. So let's go back to our colon. Let's clear the screen and let's go ahead and try and run. We got 200, so it has got down to here, but has this actually done it? It has, look at that, contents B. B meaning in bytes, so it's going to do this in raw bytes, which is fine. What I want to do now is maybe let's return some of the posted information back to the user. And for this, we need to do some additional imports. So if I do from FastAPI dot responses import JSON response, spelled correctly, of course. And what we can do now is get rid of this guy, and we can now say return a JSON response here, and this does content equal, and we then pass in a dictionary like this here. So let me just show you like what this would look like. If I just did hello 1, 2, 3 like that, for example, go back and do our endpoint, see how it just gives back this nice JSON response. We can basically like use this little dictionary to give back some information about the file. So let's do file name like this. And what we can do here is do file.file name. So we're accessing the file name attribute of the file object. Hit save, that should refresh. There we go, look at that, looks good. And then what we can do, maybe next to it, let's just do the contents of that file. And let's make this, oh, no, there we go. Let's make this capital, shall we? So the contents of this are going to be the contents here. And I want to convert this to strings. Note it was showing us raw bytes earlier. Let's convert this back into a string. We'll clear our terminal that we use for curling, hit run, and look at that. I know it's got the B there, but yeah, that's okay. So we can see we've got a JSON response showing me this is the file that was submitted. This is the contents of said file. So really, that's the basics of it. That's how we post a file to an endpoint in FastAPI. In reality, we will be using some authentication, and in the next video in the series, we're going to be looking at how to do some middleware. So basically, we'll have, imagine it as like a security guard. So someone stood at the front of FastAPI. Every request that comes in is going to look at its headers and say either yes, no, you're authorized. If it is, it can then pass it on. So in the next video, we're going to be sticking like someone in front of this, which is our middleware. And then if the authorization header or just the header is fine, we can then send it off to here. It's, in my view, very rare you're going to have an open endpoint like this that will just receive a file and do whatever because, well, you could upload whatever file you want, which I don't think is a great idea. Now, to actually save our file, we're going to be introducing a new library, and it's called Aiofiles. So I'm going to first do poetry add Aiofiles. Mine's already installed, so if you do this, yours will look different. So you can see, yeah, mine's just saying it's already here, and that's fine. So I'll clear mine for a second. You will see it if you go to your PyProject toml. There it is. There's the version it's added. So you wanted to pin a certain version. Yeah, you could do that here, and that's okay. And now if we head back to here for a second, we now need to import it into here. So import AIO files like this. This is a nice package because it allows for like asynchronous handling of files, and it's a nice thing to use in this context. We have an async function doing some IO stuff, so this is a great match to be doing what we're going to do now, which is saving that file. So I'm first going to strip this away for just a minute. Actually, I'll comment it out and explain why, because it's probably quite important. And we're now going to be using a context manager to save the contents of that file. So I'm going to be doing async with, and we then use aiofiles.open. So I'll do aiofiles.open, like that. That's okay. And you can see it's giving us a few little things here. So why don't we just do yes.txt? We'll put this in a proper location later, but that's fine. And we then want to write this in WB, which is write bytes. Now we need to do as, let's do new file. I'm always tempted to do as file, but that'll be a bad idea, seeing as I've just done that here as well. And we'll do this here. And now inside of our context manager, we now want to write some code to basically say, take the contents from here and save them into a given file. So what I do is I take this instead. Let's do that here. Now the reason I want to remove it from here now is because if I did this and tried to do it again, like the buffer's empty, like it's already been read. So if you kept this here and did it here, no dice. You're not going to have anything to put into our new file. So make sure that first one is removed. And we could then do await again, and then we'll do this new file here. So bear in mind, we've opened this new file under this kind of context, or this is the way to identify that new file. So we're then going to do new file dot write some stuff to it, and then once this block is finished, that file is considered closed. It's been used by Python, and the indented block exits, and it then returns this here. So we need to do new file like this, dot write contents here like that. Let's pause there and run it and just see if this actually writes. Looks good. We can then go to our curl one, clear this guy out as well, and we'll hit run. And there we go, yes.txt, there it is. So where's our original file? myfile.txt. That has now written its contents to yes.txt. So yeah, happy days, that all looks good. Let's quickly just recover this block again. So we've done async with, so this bit's effectively like your standard context management, but I've put async at the start as well. This bit is reading in the original file passed to the endpoint, and then this await new file.write contents is saying, take the string that I got from the file that came in and write the contents of that string to this new file here. It's important to have the async and the await here. But yeah, that's effectively it. That's how you do it. I must say there are a number of ways of doing this, but personally, I think this is the simplest way I've done it. So if you're new to FastAPI, you're looking for a nice sort of simple way to, perhaps write some stuff to a directory, this is probably the way I'd recommend doing it. Let's go one step further. Let's close this and let's just do a new directory called write.dir. We'll copy a path to this, and let's do write path is equal to this here. Let's do that, and let's maybe put this here before this. Actually, maybe what we could do is go ahead and use pathlib for this. Do rather enjoy using pathlib. So suppose we have a full path here. Maybe you want to call a file something different. Let's do file name. As maybe let's call it the same thing, purely out of laziness, but that's fine. So we'll do it as this here. Let's get rid of that, get rid of that. We'll define this into a path object. So we'll make this here. And then inside this guy, we can then just do write path / file name here. And that should be good. This is the kind of the joining operator for pathlib. So if we actually don't need to restart the app, it will do it anyway. But I will clear my curling screen and run this again. And hopefully, there it is, right? Directory now has this in it as well. So this will just be like, if you wanted to keep your files in a separate location, I mean, that's why I've done like the full path here. You could do a relative path relative to where your entry point is, or just doing a full path keeps it nice and simple. And that brings us to the end of the video, guys. I do hope this is helpful. In my view, this is probably one of the more simple ways to handle kind of file management with FastAPI. If you've got any of your own suggestions or methods that you think are better than this, or similar to it, feel free to ping us a comment and I'll be happy to reply to all of them. Cheers for watching, guys, and see you all in the next video.